coming at you live from my bathroom. So yeah, we just moved. So this is my last video. We just finished moving. This, for right now, is the best place for me to film. Also, I'm using my headphones as a microphone because the bathrooms, as you can probably guess, are very echoey. I'm working on getting a mic, I promise. I just haven't got around to it yet, and especially moving, I just have a lot more going on. But yeah, new location. I'm not being held hostage, I promise.
Now let's talk about little kids trying to grow way too fast. And possibly why.
We've all seen the videos going viral of 9-year-olds having 20 steps skincare routines. I mean, I think I use 3 things for my skincare routine, if you could even call it that, because it's not even routine at this point. I wake up and if I feel like it, I do it. If not, then oh well. But they got like 20-step skincare routines, bombarding makeup stores, buying all of them, disrespecting parents and teachers and authoritative figures, and just overall being unruly and acting more grown, despite how young a lot of them are. Like most of them are very young. Now, of course, this isn't actually anything new. Kids have been trying to act older than their age forever. That's just a kid thing. They've always wanted to do adultish things. They always dreamed about being older. I mean, I used to do the same thing. I'm sure when you were younger, you used to be the same way. Oh, I can't wait till I get older and I'll get a car. I'll get to do whatever I want, go wherever I want. Mom and dad will tell me no. And then they'll try to portray themselves in an older manner, despite how young they are. So of course, there are a bunch of reasons on why this happened, or I guess why this could happen. I mean, everyone has their own theories, right? And their feelings on the matter. I wanted to talk about something that I feel like tends to get overshadowed a little bit, something we don't really think about a lot. It's not a completely original thought. Other people have also said this too, but I kind of wanted to talk more about it and make it a little bit more mainstream so that people can take it into consideration and maybe think about it a little bit more. But before we get into what I want to talk about, I want to talk about the obvious because it is still worth mentioning. And I think it's just to lay the foundation for what I'm about to say next. So first, social media. And listen, I know you're rolling your eyes and you're sighing like, oh, brother, blaming everything on social media. First of all, I'm not trying to blame social media entirely. As I just mentioned, kids were doing this before the internet was a thing, okay? Some of y'all like to put words in my mouth / misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the whole thing is social media because it happened before social media. So again, it's the obvious, but let me just briefly go over it. The internet gives easier access to the world and different ideas, right? So naturally, kids are going to be heavily influenced by other people, influencers, their favorite YouTubers, their TV shows, blah, blah, blah. So arguably, because of the internet having so many other people that you can look at, it could pose even more pressure to kids, and the social expectations could be a lot more harsh because of the internet. Because not only are they watching, adults do adult things, which they should be able to, but now they're watching 15-year-old girls just like they're 21 and act like they're 21. So instead of just the kids in your primary school, being like, she's the cool kid, I want to be like her, and feeling pressured. Now you have the whole world, all the kids of the world to compare yourself to, and that puts a lot of pressure on kids. So of course, that would be linked to, all right, just don't put kids on the internet. Stop letting them be iPad kids. Let them go outside, let them read a book, let them do literally anything else. Which, yeah, I would agree. I don't see any reason why a 10-year-old would need Instagram. But a lot of parents are tending to get a little bit more lenient with the way that they care for their children nowadays, which is another conversation you see coming up a whole lot. This gentle parenting that seems to be really popular among the parents of today. Of course, a lot of people say that this is just a reaction from the way that older generations used to treat their children. In psychology, there are actually 3 main styles of parenting, and authoritarian is what we would call this style here. A lot more strict, not much wiggle room, a lot of rules, but not a lot of explanation of those rules, which results in children being very disciplined, at least in the early stages of life, but then it can turn into a lot of rebellion afterwards because of the strictness that was put upon them. And then you have permissive parenting. Permissive parenting, hence the word permissive. You could probably guess that's the more lax, laissez-faire, my child can do whatever they want, really no rules, no discipline. The parent is basically more of a friend than a parent, which having so much freedom and no structure, especially for a child, can then lead them to develop bad habits. They can be more impulsive, have less regulation, because obviously they've never been told no in their life. They've never had any structure. Now, there's been a 4th style of parenting that's been kind of attached not in recent years. I think there was actually probably the 1900s, the late 1900s, it's been added on. But uninvolved or neglectful parenting can kind of go hand in hand with permissive, except uninvolved parenting is definitely like the lowest end of the spectrum of actually not doing anything. Like that's just straight up neglecting your child, not even giving them anything they need, not giving them attention. The child is basically completely detached from their life. So permissive parenting can definitely go down into completely neglectful parenting. But that's sort of what we're seeing a lot of today, just kind of that, you do what you want. Doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get, discipline for it, no punishment for it. So that's what a lot of parents are doing nowadays. And they're claiming that to be gentle parenting. But gentle parenting would actually be more of the third style of parenting, which is authoritative parenting. And psychologists will often refer to this as the best style of parenting. It's basically a mix of authoritarian and permissive. You develop good rules, good boundaries, you have good communication. They have standards for their children, but they're not like so over the top that they're impossible and they put a lot of stress. They're very reasonable. They do use disciplinary actions, but they're not so much in the prospect to invoke fear, more than it is to bring that structure and be like, okay, this is what you've done. This is the consequence of your action. To kind of teach them that that's how the real world works. The rules are very clear. They make very clear guidelines, but they leave a lot of room for discussion and communication and talking with their child. So that builds a lot of trust between them. So then the kid doesn't have to feel like, they have to sneak around, but they also don't feel like they can just do whatever, because they understand that there are still consequences. So yeah, authoritative parenting is the one that psychologists normally cling to as probably the best one, the best style of parenting that we have. It just takes a lot of patience. It's very difficult, as you can hear. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of communication, a lot of openness. So it can be very difficult to achieve, but not impossible. But anyways, I'm saying like that's, I think, what gentle parenting, a lot of these parents are trying to say that that's what they're trying to do, but it ends up just being permissive and even sometimes neglectful parenting. So with this new age of misunderstanding which parenting style they actually want to use, which would be the authoritative parenting style, they're using more permissive. They're not really doing much about discipline. They're not really giving any rules. They just kind of let them do whatever they want, thus allowing a 10-year-old to have Instagram. And then of course, that just results in them looking at people, comparing themselves to other people, wanting to be like people, specifically the adults, because that's who you're going to see more of. So they beg their parents to go to Sephora at only 10 years old. They buy out all the shows. They put on heavy makeup. They put a lot of skincare that frankly is doing more harm to their skin than good at this point. They have them dress however they want, and the parents don't really do anything about it. So obviously, while social media is a big contributor, a lot of parents aren't really doing enough to regulate that screen time, just being aware of when is an appropriate age to put them on the internet. And then things like parental controls and being more involved when it comes to what they see on the internet, especially at a young age. As they get older, teenagers like 15, 16, 17, you start to dumb that down a little bit. You give them their space. I think it's still important to just be sure, like aware of maybe who they're following, who they're being influenced by. I think that's really important because of course that could cause some issues if they're looking at the wrong type of people or trying to follow the wrong type of people. But especially very, very young, parental controls need to be on. Everything always needs to be monitored. And then when it comes to like little babies, like I said, they know like 10-year-old, 9-year-old needs Instagram and TikTok. Frankly, YouTube Kids should be their only option. That and maybe Cool Math. Again, just want to get the obvious out of the way. It's still worth mentioning, even though it's obvious. I just wanted to talk about it to lay the foundation that obviously social media is contributing a lot to this and a lot to kids wanting to grow up faster and the parents kind of not doing much to explain to them that they don't need to do all that yet. Speaking of the parent and just adults in general, but something else to take into consideration, something I've been thinking about recently, is a lot of these kids, again, just a theory, but the kids not listening, wanting to act more grown, dress more grown, do more grown things, could be related more to the way that kids want to be treated like adults and not so much act or present themselves like adults because of the lack of respect they feel they get as a kid. And this is something I've noticed with kids a lot. Like, of course, they want to dress up and do the things that their parents do, and also just because of pressure that is a contributor. But I also think that they want the respect that an adult gets. And when they see that an adult gets respect, right? Because children have that very simplistic way of thinking, right? And this isn't me trying to be insulting or anything like that. I'm literally going to get into that. But it's not me being insulting. This is literally just children. Their physical brain is not at the same capacity as an adult. So their way of thinking tends to be a lot more simple than adults. So to them, it's like, an adult gives another adult a certain level of respect. So it's like, I want that respect too. So now I'll present myself and act as an adult. The thing about kids is that they're not normally taken too seriously, especially the younger they are. Now, as I just mentioned, kids do not have the same processing nor the same just experiences that an adult has. They just don't have the same level of functioning. So that's the parents and the adults and the caretaker's job to guide them through life until they're old enough to reach that level of functioning. So they help them navigate their way through life with all the things that they don't understand about the world until they're old enough to understand. But because of this, there tends to be a thin line between understanding and acknowledging that children are less experienced in the world, so you need to gently guide them, and looking down on children because they're inferior. Because the former could very easily turn itself into the latter. You're a child, you're dumb, you don't know anything, and not you're a child, you're inexperienced, which is why I'm going to assist you. It's kind of like teachers, right? I mean, of course, they are also adults and authoritative figures, but at certain times, you'll have those two types of teachers. You'll have that one teacher that understands that obviously the children do not know what they're doing, because the point of the class is for you to teach them. So they have that understanding that the students are not going to understand everything, they're not going to know everything, and that's my job to make it very clear to them, to guide them through because they're inexperienced and they don't have the knowledge that I do. Then you have the other type of teachers who's like, you don't know the answer to question 3? You're dumb. Or that superiority complex that they kind of have of like, I'm the teacher, I know everything, you don't know anything. And they kind of like belittle you for it. It's like, well, yeah, we don't know anything. This is why we're here. We're here to learn, aren't we? So a lot of times children feel like they're not being listened to, they're not being respected, and they're just constantly being belittled. But when they see that respect given to other adults, they try to assume that position of an adult to hopefully gain that same respect. So they'll try mimicking their actions, their behaviors, their speech, the way they carry themselves, and of course, not listening to, authority figures either, because adults don't have to listen to anyone, remember? So that could also contribute to like the unruliness that we're seeing in a lot of kids. But you don't treat a child the way that you would treat an adult because of that understanding that they are children, they are different from adults on a literal physical brain functioning level. So the respect that a child gets is probably not going to be or look the same as an adult, because again, you wouldn't treat a child like an adult. You can't do that. It's not going to work out. If anything, that's just going to cause more problems, put a lot more pressure on them. They're meant to be guided and assisted until they can find their own way. So the respect you give to a child is not going to look the same as the respect you give to an adult, right? Similar to how you have different cultures and respect looks different in different ways, right? America has very different respect norms than say Japan or just other countries. They have very different respect norms. As a matter of fact, I think in America, it is proper and actually respectful to look someone in the eye when they're talking. But in Japan, I believe it's Japan, or it might have been Korea. I'm not 100% sure about that. But I think looking a person in the eye in one of those countries is actually seen as disrespect, seen like you're challenging them. So obviously respect is going to look different to different people in different ways, but nonetheless, everyone deserves respect. That includes children. So yes, while you may not treat a child like an adult because they're obviously not an adult, so they won't understand the things that adults do, they still deserve to have respect. They still deserve to be listened to be heard out at the very least, to be acknowledged that their opinion does matter, and that they aren't some dog that you just continue to order around. I mean, just like in the way that there's no room for negotiation, no room for talking. You do what I say, and that's it. Like maybe in the beginning stages, right, of like classical conditioning, training the dog and also trying to train your child. Maybe that's the extent of where the similarities are, but that's also the extent of where they end. Because after that, a human is an autonomous being. They have their own thoughts, their ideals, they can speak, and they can share those ideals. So yes, obviously your children being able to listen is a very important aspect. When you tell them something, ideally you would want them to be able to do it and listen. But even in the event of ordering your children around and telling your children to do something, they still do deserve a level of respect. Like just basic manners of please and thank you. I feel like a lot of parents tend to forget that. But it's a double standard for the child because we always teach the child, you say please, you say thank you if you want something done. And when you get it done, say thank you, right? We instill this into them. But then when they see their parents and their authority figures not really doing the same thing, that's when that perception changes. That's when that's like, oh, so wait a minute, why do I have to say please and thank you, but you don't have to? Like I said, this isn't me at all trying to be like, kids, you don't have to listen to your parents' authority figures. Like, no, it's very important to. I remember seeing a video of a teacher, I don't remember where it was or who it was, but she was explaining at how dangerous it could be for these children not to be listening the way that they are. Because in the event of an emergency, if she says line up, they need to do that in order to be safe. And if they're not listening, that could literally pose a hazard for all of them. So yes, absolutely, it is very important for them to listen to authority figures. But once again, I just think that it's important for adults, teachers, parents, whatever, to remember that when you're ordering them around, you don't treat them like a dog, right? They are still humans. They still deserve respect. No, it is not going to look exactly the same that you give to another adult, but they are kids nonetheless. We shouldn't be so quick to shut them down or ignore them just because, oh, they're kids, they don't know what they're talking about. Not taking them seriously, belittling them, not giving them proper explanations. Like, especially as kids get older, like, I think it's a good idea to explain certain things to them, explain what they did wrong, why they're being punished. I feel like a lot of us forget to do that as well. They just still deserve to be respected, seen, and heard. But because I feel like because they're not getting that, they don't feel like they get that, they now have to pose themselves as an adult so they can hopefully get that respect. So they're trying to compensate for that lack of respect that a lot of adults and caretakers don't give them. So I think when we're talking about children, again, it's difficult, it is a slippery slope. I feel like we use that phrase a lot nowadays, but it's because nothing is black and white, you know? Well, I won't say nothing, but like when it comes to complex issues like this, it's definitely not so black and white. And just because it is a slippery slope doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. Like, this is definitely something that we need to address. And I would encourage teachers, caretakers, and adults, and older sisters, older siblings, whatever, just to be more mindful of the way you're talking to a kid so they don't feel like you're talking down to them more than you're just talking to them in order to encourage them, help them, and guide them. We don't want them feeling inferior and like they're being belittled, because then once again, that could cause them to try to gain respect in a different way. And that could come from obviously them posing as an adult. But again, that's just a theory. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like 100% true. I feel like it is something to consider and just to keep in mind when we are dealing with kids and just people in general. Like, it's just give people like basic respect. I feel like that's being lost, especially with the internet, you know, like people are just so disrespectful and rude online, stuff that they would most definitely never say in person. So people have gotten really comfortable with that, but just give other humans, give other beings just decent respect. That's all. And that includes kids. Don't make them feel like they're stupid and inferior. Just acknowledge that obviously they are not as knowledgeable as you, and that's why it's your job to guide them. So with that being said, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I don't really know how long in this bathroom that I'm going to be in. I go back to school in August, so I'm hoping in August I can either film in the car or possibly film in one of the rooms in the school that I can rent out. I think I can even rent out a mic too, so I'll be able to kind of like get a better setup going. But this is what we're working with for right now. Okay, I'm sorry. I do have a lot of really fun ideas for school though. Like, I have so many ideas for when I go back to school. I'm really excited. So definitely look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.